Hello, this is Christian Okoye, former Kansas City Chiefs. You are listening to Grueling Truth.
Hello, and welcome to the Grueling Truth college football program. I'm your host, Sean McCormick, along with my son, Ryne McCormick. We'll be bringing you weekly updates throughout the 2016 college football season. Our show today is all about the Power 5 conferences and what teams will be the ones to watch as eventual conference champs, as well as a few surprise teams that you should be looking for and should be gathering some nationwide attention. Ryne, you're with me, right?
Yes, sir. I am ready for another college football season.
Okay, well, as college fans know, Alabama, they're the ones to knock off. They're the returning champ. Clemson, I guess you could say there wasn't a lot of defense in the national championship game last year. 45-40 was the final, and Clemson's going to be up there too. But we've got some other teams. We're going to go through all of the Power 5 conferences. Of course, we can't forget Notre Dame either, correct?
No, Notre Dame is ranked 8th right now in the BCS polls, and they are looking to have a strong showing with a great defense coming back this year.
Yeah, well, let's just kick it off with Notre Dame since we started. You were talking defense, pretty good. They've got they've got a defensive end, Isaac Rochelle. He recorded 7.5 tackles for loss. Matching that was the nose tackle, Jaron Jones, at 7.5 tackles for loss. And they've always got athletes at Notre Dame. Brian Kelly, he stocks the cupboard every year. Do you think the defense is going to be what's going to make a difference with the Irish this year?
Well, I think the defense is going to make a difference with the Irish this year, and especially if they can get that initial push up front. Linebackers at Notre Dame, typically play the position pretty well, so I think they're going to go as far as their front three will take them.
Okay, now switching over to the other side, Notre Dame has I don't know whether would you call it a quarterback controversy, an issue. They've got two quarterbacks vying for number one.
I think anytime you look at Brian Kelly's team and the history of Brian Kelly from the time he was at UC, from the time he went to Notre Dame, he's always had quarterback controversy, and he's always willing to play the two-quarterback system.
I can't help but think of being at one of UC spring practices when it was a few years ago, of course, UC, when Brian Kelly was there, and 5 different plays he threw out 5 different quarterbacks because he was not happy with their play.
Well, and that's what Brian Kelly is. He's a perfectionist. If you're not doing it right, he's going to find somebody that will.
Okay, so as far as Notre Dame's schedule, what's it look like? I mean, I know they've got a big game coming up September 3rd. They're at Texas. Texas is going to be much improved over last year.
Yeah, Notre Dame's schedule is really not an easiest one. I mean, they've got a lot of offense returning. They were ranked 38th in yards per game last year, averaging over 455 yards a game. But yeah, they open up at Texas on the 4th, and then they're also
I see they have Michigan State, Stanford, USC looks like to be their tough ones now. Some detractors to the Fighting Irish may be looking at those games against Nevada, Duke, North Carolina State, and Army as being a little bit, I don't want to get into the Patsy stage, but they're suspect.
Well, and I think that's all across the board in college football. I mean, you got, your first few weeks, where Notre Dame's coming out of the gate and playing Texas and bringing a decent Nevada team to play in South Bend as well. You got Michigan State opening up with a Furman, Ohio State opening up with a Bowling Green, Michigan opening up with Hawaii. Alabama's one of the other teams like Notre Dame. They want to play somebody right out of the gate, so they're going to travel to USC.
And that's going to be a good game. That's a good game there. Let's get into the Power 5 conferences now. As far as the ACC, obviously you've got Clemson, you've got Florida State. Noteworthy, the winner of between those two in the past 5 meetings, those have been the ACC champs. So do you see any difference there this year, Ryne?
No, I don't. I think it comes down to Clemson and Florida State. I think all in all, I mean, the ACC's especially you look at two teams like Clemson and Florida State. They like to pile on the points. I think at the end of the year, it's whoever stops them is going to win that conference. So defense has got to really come together a little bit more than they did last year in the national championship game if Clemson wants to repeat.
Yeah, the defense is something. Clemson's definitely got to regroup there. I can't see Florida State just bowing down, though.
No. Florida State's not going to bow down. Jimbo Fisher, I mean, he learned under a great coach, that's for sure. And he's taken everything he's learned and worked it with Florida State in the upcoming seasons. And I think they're looking forward to another good season in the ACC.
So is Jimbo wearing the straw hat?
Jimbo wearing the straw hat. Yeah, he takes after his predecessor there with Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden being one of my favorite college coaches. He did a great job, and Jimbo waited his time out and stepped in, and it's going pretty well down there at Florida State.
Okay, let's move to the Big Ten. Big Ten, going to be some big surprises. At least I think so. I know Ohio State is picked in a lot of preseason polls as the number 1 team to beat. Ohio State does have J.T. Barrett coming back, big returnee, I should say, at quarterback. Anytime you have an experienced quarterback coming back, you have to, not discount that team as being serious.
Well, especially a quarterback coming back like J.T. Barrett that's a playmaker from all aspects of the field. I mean, he got some looks at wide receiver last year, and, he's coming back, returning to play quarterback. However, I look for Michigan to really be the team to beat in that conference. Jim Harbaugh, most college coaches, you got to give your coaches 3-4 years to get your guys in there, and I think he could be doing it in year 2.
Michigan, if you look at the Big Ten schedule, they do play Ohio State. They do play, obviously, Michigan State, and they're also taking on Iowa. I personally think that those are 3 must-win games for the Wolverines to even have a shot at doing anything.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, if they could sweep the house with Ohio State, Michigan State, and Iowa, let's not forget that all these teams that we're talking about have great defensive-minded attitudes. I mean, that's what takes it to win the national championship.
Yeah. There a lot of the Big Ten preview, there was a lot of talk about Urban Meyer and a little bit of animosity, especially from Penn State fans, talking about how the way Urban does his recruiting. Now, Meyer's come out and said that's not true. What do you think, as far as recruiting-wise, what everybody in the Big Ten does?
Well, I think anytime you're looking at college recruiting, it's a dog-eat-dog world. I mean, they can say that, they're not going to step on anybody's toes. At the end of the day, they're going to do what they have to do to secure their job at the end of the year. Because, I mean, this is their livelihood. This is what's putting bread and butter on the table for their families to eat at night. And, they're going to do whatever it takes. As far as Urban Meyer, Urban Meyer, let's just admit it, he's a great salesman.
He's a pretty dang good coach too. He really gets the most out of his team. He gets especially in the big games. I mean, he seems to just bring it out. I know you're not a big Ohio State fan. I know you're looking for Michigan to topple, but I can't discount the Buckeyes from being right up there.
No, you can't discount the Buckeyes. I just think you've got to you just got to look at what Harbaugh is going to bring to that Michigan team. I mean, he's going to bring a hard-nosed defense, and that's where they're going to that's where they're really going to excel. Hopefully against Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State, yes, they put up the offense, but they also have a great defense returning as well.
Okay, let's move on. Move on to the Big 12 now. You have Oklahoma, the Sooners. They have Heisman hopeful quarterback Baker Mayfield. You've got some people are leaning towards Oklahoma State. Even TCU mentioned. Those are the three big dogs in the Big 12. What are your thoughts there as far as the Cowboys and the Horned Frogs?
Well, when we're talking about the Big Ten, we can just stop talking about defense, period.
We're talking about Big 12 now. We're talking Big 12 now.
Or Big 12, yeah. That's what I'm saying. We can forget about talking defense, period, because they don't play it in the Big Ten. They just see who can score 70 week in and week out, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the same thing this year, especially with Oklahoma's quarterback coming back.
I would absolutely hate to be a defensive coordinator in the Big 12. It's like they just say, we're playing 7-on-7.
Yeah, and that's basically what it is. I mean, you get point totals in Vegas week in and week out in the Big 12 that are sitting between 80 and 85 points. I mean, that's just unheard of.
Now, the one thing that I've been reading and seeing about Oklahoma State, the one thing is there are possible some trap games out there. You've got West Virginia. You've got Texas. Texas we talked a little bit about during the Notre Dame segment, but Texas is not to be discounted this year at all.
No, Charlie Strong's going to have them guys ready to go in his second year down there. Also, a game to watch on that Oklahoma State schedule is going to be the Houston game. That could be a possible trap game. Houston's got their quarterback coming back, Greg Ward. Threw for 2,800 yards last year and also rushed for 1,100. So that kind of goes with what we were saying about the defense in the Big Ten. I mean, he had almost 4,000 yards of total offense himself. Then that just goes to show you that today's game has changed a lot.
Now, what's really going to be interesting is Gary Patterson. He's all about defense. It's the Big 12. I know that, but the TCU head coach, he's got to really get his defense to hold up because they lost a ton of offensive players.
Yeah, I think they lost 10 offensive players, not 10 offensive starters, but 10 offensive players who are seeing the field every Saturday. Greg Patterson's always been around about the defense and building his teams around the defense, so I'm excited to see if he keeps that up down there at TCU.
Yeah, okay. And not to correct you, but we were talking about Houston. That's Oklahoma and Houston. The Sooners
Oklahoma and Houston, yes.
Yeah, that's game one for them. And Houston, the Cougars, they've got a chip on their shoulder. They're not a part of a Power 5 conference, and they thought that they got shafted a little bit last year. That could be an eye-opener for the Sooners.
Well, and Houston's coming off of that the big win in the Peach Bowl against Florida State last year, and I think that's going to give them some momentum heading into the 2016 campaign.
Okay, now let's get into the SEC. Everybody's talking about Nick Saban. The $8 million coach gets $8 million a year, and he still gets his house paid for. Boy, looking into that. I guess to the victors go the spoils. Bama, returning champ. Who can unseat them in the SEC?
The only team that I really see competing with them in the SEC, and I mean, you can't really say the only team because the SEC is filled up with many of teams, and I see Butch Jones and the Tennessee Volunteers doing it. I mean, they bring back Josh Dobbs this year. He had 2,300 yards passing last year, 15 touchdowns, and also ran for another 800 on the ground. I just really see that Butch Jones team. I mean, he had their defense ready to play last year. They're returning two of their linebackers, and that's going to be big for them.
Yeah, no worry from last year. I know the season was kind of disappointing for Butch and company, but they lost to Oklahoma in overtime. They pretty much played man up with Bama. Crimson Tide coming out 5 points ahead in that game. That was actually, I don't know. Can this be Rocky Top's year?
Yeah, I really think Knoxville's going to be screaming Rocky Top out every window of every dorm room this year. I really look for them to be a big note in the SEC. However, you can never count on Alabama and what Coach Saban brings to the table.
Now, let's not forget LSU either. The Bayou Tigers, they're always got to be factored into that SEC equation.
Well, and there's a reason Les Miles came back, I believe. I mean, they wanted him gone. He decided to come back. I think he came back, and there's a reason for that.
Okay, now, moving out west, that's Pac-12. My opinion, you've got Stanford, you've got the rest. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh on the other teams. Maybe Utah. Utes, they did lose a few key players last year, and they do have to play. I know USC has got a tough schedule, Arizona, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, but I just can't see anybody topping Stanford.
No, I really can't either. I mean, they do a great job year in and year out running the pro-style offense, running the sustained defense, and they do a very good job. We'll see week one. If USC knocks off Notre Dame, I might say there's somebody else in the Pac-12 that's knocking on the door.
Yeah. And when you mention Stanford, the Cardinal, you got to mention Christian McCaffrey. Heisman Trophy runner-up last year. Leads a strong offense, and you just have to like the way it's a ground and pound affair in Stanford land. I mean, Palo Alto just loves to run the ball.
Well, and that goes back to the point that I just made. They always surround themselves with a pro-style offense, a good quarterback. And they run the ball, play good defense. They play typical old school football over at Stanford.
They're one of the schools. Harbaugh leaves a few years ago, and they really did not miss a beat.
They did not miss a beat at all, and I mean they pretty much kept the same philosophy. And the people that don't understand the recruiting aspects of things don't understand that those are harder to get, those kind of players there, because not only do they have to fill in the system, they also have to fill in the school system, which is not easy at Stanford.
Yeah, you got to have academics. I mean, you're talking the equivalent of a player that can actually go play for a Harvard, for a Yale. Yet you're stepping up and you're playing with the big boys.
Yeah, you're talking the brains of a Harvard student or a Yale student in the athletic build to be able to play at Alabama, LSU, Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that they can do that. The one drawback the Cardinals seem to have, they'll be cruising along all year long, and then they seem, it's between week 8 and the end of the season, they have that trip up. And
it's a big game.
It normally happens on national television.
It's the big game. They can't seem to get over that hump. And it's been year in, year out, and that's been since Harbaugh's been there.
Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit now about Power 5 surprises. I'm going to throw out some teams here. I just want some perspective from you, Ryne. As far as in the Big Ten, the West, I see Nebraska as possibly a cog into just throwing a monkey wrench into the cog of the Big Ten West. Mike Riley, he lost 7 games last year, but that's by a total of 31 points. I think the biggest loss they had was to Purdue. I believe it was by 10 points. So when you think of that, they played tough. They just couldn't get over the hump. And I know a win's a win, a loss is a loss. Al Davis, whatever it takes to win type attitude. How do they get the notoriety, and how do they build on last year?
Well, I think it's all bulletin board material in Nebraska's locker room this year. I mean, you have 7 games, a total of 31 points. I mean, you just got to find a way to finish out games, and that's what that stat tells me, is that they're just not finding a way to finish the games out. And it could be a young team returning. It could be they just were in some unfortunate situations. But I think that that's really going to be bulletin board material, and look for Nebraska to be a lot better this year.
Do you think the Cornhuskers have a problem coming in? I know Nebraska is not that far from other Big Ten schools, but still, it's a bigger haul than going from Ann Arbor to East Lansing, for instance, or Columbus to Lafayette, Indiana. These guys are having to travel a little bit farther. Do you think that has to play into it at all?
I think it might have something to take into the preparation of the game. However, 12:30 on Saturdays, all those teams in Division I college football are ready to go.
Okay, now moving on to the SEC. I know everybody's expecting Tennessee, big things. I don't have them as one of my surprises. I have them as one of the should-be up theirs. The University of Florida, though. Interesting fact, speaking of Tennessee, they have not beaten Florida in 11 years. I didn't know that until I was looking up some facts here. And that means the Gators, I know the last few years the Gators have been down, kind of been toothless, but I think their teeth are developing, and the defense is getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, not winning a game in 11 years, there's just one word for that, and that's dominance. To go into Rocky Top, because over those course of 11 years, you're going into Rocky Top at least 5 times. So you're going into Rocky Top in that nation and still being able to pull out victories. I think that also says something for the Florida program as well.
Yeah, I think it also says something for the conference. SEC, I know you're going to get the Big Ten people saying, no, we're the bigger conference, we're better all around. I don't know about that. The SEC still seems to be the big dog.
By far, hands down, the best conference in college football.
Now, moving to the ACC, we've talked about Clemson, Florida State being the sure bets. A lot of eyes are on a former Michigan State assistant, second-year coach from Pitt, or for Pitt, Pat Narduzzi. Narduzzi has brought that brash, Midwest, tough-style defense that Michigan State has, and one that D'Antonio loves there. Narduzzi comes on board last year, changes things. Tells players this year, we expect to compete for the ACC championship. And it's interesting because I can't think of the name of the player, but one of the Panthers actually said that's what differentiated Narduzzi from Paul Chryst. Chryst just kind of was hemming and hawing about what he wants to do. Narduzzi's playing, matter of the fact. He's a defensive guru. He's about to make some big noise. Now the one thing is the offense. They have to replace wide receiver Tyler Boyd. But again, in the eyes of Narduzzi, who comes from a D'Antonio background, they like to run the ball. You got to watch it out. It looks like some smash mouth football in Heinz Field on Saturdays as well.
Yeah, honestly, I really don't see anybody beating Clemson or Florida State in the ACC. But it does definitely bring a different style of play to the ACC. They're not used to the hard-nosed football as much as somebody like the Big Ten is.
And one of the I think everybody's pulling for this to be the best story of the year. Running back James Conner, he had to leave last season, battled lymphoma. That supposedly has, he's beaten that opponent, which is a mighty one. And although he's not a certainty, he's penciled in as coming in as one of the running backs, as well as Kadre Olison and Darren Hall. They're back. Again, can that rough and tumble, how shall I say, let's just say Eastern Midwest style football be successful with against the other ACC teams?
Yeah, and I think it could, because I think it's something that is new to them. They're not used to seeing that type of offense, that physical style of defense. I mean, basically, you saw the national championship game last year. Clemson had the mentality, Alabama, you're going to score 40, I'm going to try to score 45. However, that worked out in the opposite way.
Okay, as we wrap up this initial show, Grueling Truth College Football Program, Jeff, I know, predictions are like excuses. Everyone seems to have them. Who do you like as the front runner to end up number one as the national champion this year?
Alabama. I don't think you can take it away from him from what Nick Saban's done down there. I mean, he returns a lot of starters. He's having some off-the-field issues that seem to not be so much of a distraction as it might have been at some other schools, and I think he does a great job of getting his teams prepared and knows what he has to do. I like Alabama.
Okay, well, I'm gonna counter with you here. I think Urban Meyer is going to have the Ohio State Buckeyes primed to return to the national championship. And last time those two teams met, you know what happened?
Yeah, we do.
I can just say one play. Counter. You think Saban's defense has ever worked on the counter play again?
I'm sure they figured out how to stop it now.
Okay, Ryne, it's a pleasure as always to be talking to my son, but especially now we get to do it on this forum. You get to listen to it. Hopefully you're going to be returning. We're going to be returning with the best in college football weekly right here on The Grueling Truth.